We're going to do this in English because that just makes everything easier. It means I don't necessarily have to read everything out to people who don't understand Japanese. By the way, I also don't understand Japanese. Not that well, anyway. Yeah, so we're going to be doing this in English, and go. Oh, right. There are difficulty selections. Never mind those for the time being. Massive high school towers over all other buildings in this bustling urban area. So interesting thing about the game, it's it does the visual novel adventure game thing of not really localizing and vocalizing every single line of dialogue. You know, for obvious reasons, because that would just get crazy. There's a lot of dialogue in the game. But the most important stuff is generally spoken by the characters, especially in, well, we'll get into that later, but there are special segments, special story segments where, you know, a lot of the dialogue is spoken. Indeed, all of the dialogue is spoken, because otherwise the scene wouldn't work. It's like the school stands at the center of the entire world. Oh, look at that. Hope's Peak Academy. It brings in top students from every field imaginable. A government-funded school of privilege. They say that if you come here and manage to graduate, you'll be set for life. With hundreds of years of tradition, it sends the cream of the crop into the workforce every year. It was built to raise hope in the nation's future, which makes Hope's Peak a pretty fitting name. There are two things you need to attend this school. One, you have to already be attending high school. Two, you have to be the very best at what you do. So what is it with the high school phase in Japan? Like, so many games take place in high school. Maybe it's because the works themselves are targeted at high school students. It could be that simple. No ordinary student could enroll here. The only way in is if you're scouted by the school itself. And standing there at the gate of the ultimate school filled with the ultimate students was me.
Before we go any farther, I guess I should introduce myself. My name's Makoto.
Trying to play cool, I took my first step into Hope's Peak Academy. It was also my first step towards starting a new life at a new school. At least, that's what I was hoping for. And then vertigo happens. What the? But the instant I took that first step forward, my view became warped, twisted. It was like some kind of delusion, melting away and mixing together into something else. Spinning, mixing, melting away, then spinning again. And the next moment, everything went black. That was how it all began. And how life as I knew it came to an end. At that point, I should have realized the reason I was brought to Hope's Peak Academy wasn't because I had ultimate good luck. It was so I could experience ultimate despair. Sounds ominous. So, prologue. Welcome to despair. Would you like to save the data? Of course I would. Yes. Let's save. Empty slot 1. Save here. And now the game really starts for serial. Before we proceed a little bit, I just want to make a few quick observations about what just happened. So we just had this introductory cutscene, effectively, right? And since this is Game Designer Plays, I thought we'd spend a little bit of time of just breaking down a little bit what we've seen. What were the components used in composing this scene that we just witnessed? Well, we had basically background images, right? Some of these background images featured characters on them, but you know, there was no real overlaying necessarily. I think there was this one scene where Makoto is looking towards us, so I think maybe that's done with basically him being cropped out and put over a black background or something. But basically it was just a bunch of stills, some of them larger than the frame of the screen, so that the camera could kind of pan, and then there was the background music, there was written text, right? And there were a couple of sound effects, like for example when the game transitioned from Makoto being outside the school to going into the school. That's just a handful of different categories of things, and the only thing that you saw a whole lot of was actual text. Now text is probably the cheapest thing that you can produce. That's not to say that it's easy, because good writing is infinitely more difficult to make than bad writing, I feel. But it's still relatively cheap to do, considering how much time we just spent in that intro. Indeed, small spoiler alert, one point during the franchise, there's a character that kind of breaks the fourth wall and talks about adventure games in general and says, you know, there are plenty of reasons to make adventure games, not to mention, or not least of which is budgetary reasons. Right? So they're already commenting and you know, making a self-referential point about it being pretty cost-effective to make these kinds of games. So we've just had like a 5, almost 10-minute intro sequence off the back of nothing but a handful of stills, some text, some music, and you know, a few sound effects maybe. And much of the graphics that we saw, we will see several times again. So it's reusable. I mean, compare that to a Final Fantasy-esque CG intro that would take place during the same amount of time. It's just mind-boggling what the difference is in cost. So even if a game like this only sells a few 100,000 copies, I think it's a pretty cost-effective exercise, right? Okay, moving on. Makoto went somewhere. What happened? So, sorry to interrupt again. So this is interesting. So, you see how this dialogue box is written? So it says speaking in the top right corner, and that part of it gets removed when the character is not actually speaking. That's a good way of making the distinction between speaking and not speaking. Mind you, though, the only thing Makoto is saying right now is ... So it's kind of almost a little bit paradoxical. Moving on. Oh. Yeah. Here we go. What? Where am I? So, he didn't actually say these last two things, but he did make a noise. This is one trick that this game and this genre of games will often employ, and you've probably also seen it in games like Persona. So it's just to remind you what the voice and tone of the character is, who is doing the speaking. It can also be a trick that reminds you of who it is that is doing the talking, when there are no like icons or whatever to indicate this. Characters will say kind of generic lines, and then the text will say something in the generic line, but you're at least reminded of who is speaking and what kind of tone of voice they're speaking in, and also a little bit about the mood they're in, hopefully. Where am I? Says Makoto. Now speaking is gone and the text is blue, so this is more narrating. I woke up with my head resting on top of a hard wooden desk. My body feels heavy. It's pretty normal for me to zonk off in the middle of some boring class or whatever, but what was I doing asleep here just now? This isn't a classroom I've ever been in before. What the heck is going on? And now we're in a new mode. So this is the tutorial. This is completely out of context. You will notice that the frame that used to exist on top of the dialog box is gone. This is to indicate that this is not a character speaking, this is the narrator. For functional purposes, mind you, if you're to build a game like this, you should probably identify the narrator as a character in his or her own right, for purely technical reasons, because otherwise it just gets really messy. You might as well have a narrator called a narrator. Whether or not you write it on the screen is up to you, but trust me, think of the narrator as its own character and you're going to thank me later. Welcome to HopeSpeak Academy. Firstly, we'd like to explain the basic controls. You can use the mouse to adjust your aim, thank you. If you aim at an object you can interact with, you can press the left mouse button, and presto, you'll investigate that object. Brilliant. Use the WASD buttons to adjust your viewpoint, or you can press and hold the right mouse button and move the mouse around. Okay, that's interesting. Here's some bad PC porting. Like, I'm not quite sure what happened there. There's some sort of like artifact with the text. But yeah, that's a little bit fun. So you see that the text overlaps the mouse icon, and you know, lazy PC port is lazy. Also, how do they not catch this? This is like the beginning of the game. God. Anyway, why don't you try looking around the classroom? That is a good idea. So I'm moving my cursor around, right? It moves in 2D over the classroom or whatever I have in frame, and then I can rotate with the WASD, look up and down. I'm sure maybe I can invert these, I'm not sure. And then I can click on stuff and investigate. What the heck? In any normal classroom, that's where a window should be, but it looks like some kind of metal plate has been bolted over it. And if I were to knock on it, bang bang, as you can hear. Yup. Definitely metal. Thick, too. Very solid. That's a Donald Trump line. Wait, that's not what matters here. More importantly, why are there metal plates over the windows? Indeed. What's this? Is that a surveillance camera? It's a dangerous world we live in. I guess they have these to keep weirdos from just wandering in. That's fair enough. It's up there. Oh, it's a clock. Geez, I can't believe it's already 8 o'clock. It was just after 7 when I first got here. Has it really been almost an hour since then? Let's look at the clock again real quick. So this is an interesting thing. Because of the kind of content they've decided to use for this game, they're using all these so-called pre-rendered backgrounds, right? They make the art and then they basically leave it alone, and sometimes they superimpose other objects on top of the backgrounds. But this clock is clearly part of the background. You see the hands of the clock anywhere? No, because if you did, they'd have to make a new asset, a new background, every single time they needed the clock to tell you something else. I mean, either that or they could make like a 3D clock, of course, but that's the thing they haven't chosen to do. So you'll see some of these little switcheroos sometimes, like when you have the same object and it needs to say different things at different times during the course of the game, they'll still use the same asset and then they'll just use dialogue to explain that it says something, and then they'll basically not have hands on the clock or something. We'll see a lot of that throughout this series. It's just after 7 when I first got here. There we go, we've been through this. Okay, but I know what the critical path of the game wants me to do. So here's kind of the thing. This is where we can start talking about the game structure. So I need to do very specific things before the game is going to let me move on through the critical path. This is not something unique to this game or any game, really. So if I click here on the door, which would take me outside, I'd better look around the classroom a little more before I head out. This is the game telling me that you've not done all the things that we require of you to do before moving on. Now, why do these requirements even exist? What is the point of these kinds of requirements? Well, I mean, generally it's mostly that unless you do the things they want you to do before leaving the room, they cannot assume that you've done that thing, and ergo, making any reference to that thing in the future is going to be really dumb. Like, if they want you to talk to a certain character before leaving the room and you don't talk to that character cannot later reference the conversation that you were supposed to have. So they make it a requisite of even leaving the room to talk to the character. Pretty straightforward. In other words, this thing that I'm going to click right now is something that I need to have clicked because it's something that Makoto needs to know about, otherwise future dialogue is not going to make any sense. So what is this thing? That's the desk I fell asleep on. I can still see a line of drool I must have left there. I have to clean that up later. Hey, what's that on the desk? An orientation guide? Some kind of cheap-looking pamphlet. There's something handwritten on it. The next semester is about to start. Starting today, this school will be your entire world. What the hell? Is this someone's idea of a joke? Okay, let's see. So what might have happened is I got myself so wound up, I passed out in the main hall, and then someone carried me here? If that's true, it must mean this is a classroom inside Hope's Peak. But then if that's true, that just raises more questions. This is all really strange. I mean, those metal plates covering the windows is like a prison or something. It's like it's a prison or something. I'm pretty sure he would have made that line of dialogue whether or not I would have interacted with the metal plates, because I think that it's just assumed that the player noticed the metal plates with their eyes, and at the very least Makoto did, and now he's telling you that there are metal plates. So I don't think this was a conditional dialogue that only happened because I clicked the metal plates on the windows. None of this makes any sense. I should probably head back to the main hall. It's already past the meeting time. There might be other students there now. Okay then. You can leave the classroom by pressing the R key. The R key, okay. Leave the area. Yes. Okay, now I'm out. I'm in the hallway. Jeez, this hallway is kind of weird too. This is getting stranger by the second. I honestly have no idea what's going on. By the time I got back to the main hall, everyone else was already there.
Whoa, hey! Another new kid?
Huh? Then you guys are all...
Yeah, we're all new here. Today's supposed to be our first day of class.
So, counting him, that makes 15. Seems like a good cutoff point, but I wonder if this is everyone.
Standing before me were the ultimate students that had been handpicked by the school. I looked around at everyone who'd gathered there, taking in their faces one at a time. Maybe I was just imagining it, but I could swear I could feel a kind of aura coming from each of them. Here we go. How's it going? My name's Makoto Naegi. Sorry I'm late, a bunch of stuff happened, and then all of a sudden I was just asleep. Whoa, you too? Things just keep getting curiouser and curiouser. So strange, I declare beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is a strange situation indeed. What are you talking about? I honestly have no idea what's going on right now.
Got it.
Just a moment, there is something else we must address.
Listen to me.
Makoto, your tardiness is unacceptable. Surely you were aware that the meeting was to start at 8 AM sharp. To be late on your first day is unspeakable. I must report you and you must accept your due punishment.
What?
What's your problem? It's not like you wanted to be late. Didn't have any control over it. God.
That's right.
Everyone just calm down. Listen, why don't we all go around and introduce ourselves? Yes, she's well raised.
Huh?
The hell? Now's no time for friggin' introductions. Maybe, but it may be good to at least find out who we all are before digging into the bigger problems here. I mean, how are we even supposed to talk to each other if we don't know each other's names?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay, so let's get introductions out of the way. Then we can move on to whatever else. Sound good? I'm still totally lost, but I think it's best to just focus on getting to know each other for now. So I guess this is as good a chance as I'm gonna get. I already looked everyone up on that Hope Speak Academy thread online, but I still don't really know what kind of people they actually are. Time to find out. I'll start by talking to those 5 over there. Right, so they're letting me talk to people in order. I'm not really sure why they're grouping them up. It's not impossible that one of the reasons is what we discussed before. So future dialogues are going to reference people I'm supposed to already have spoken to. So I can't really talk in just any order. I could feel everyone's tension evaporating. But then, it began.
Testing, testing. Mic check 1, 2. This is a test of the school broadcast system. Am I on? Can everyone hear me? Okay, well then.
Voice seemed totally out of place. It was so playful, so completely unconcerned. I couldn't help but feel a deep, unnerving dread at the sound of it. It was like hearing someone laugh at the scene of an accident.
To all incoming students, I would like to begin the entrance ceremony at right now. Please make your way to the gymnasium at your earliest convenience. That's all. I'll be waiting.
See, told ya. It's totally normal entrance ceremony stuff. Hiro was right, but in a way that just emphasized how completely not normal all of us were.
Hey there! Howdy! Hello! Is everyone here? Good! Then let's get things rolling!
Parentheses, I've only played the game in Japanese before, so I'm actually quite excited to hear some of the English voice acting, and so far I think it's pretty good. That bear.
Huh? Teddy bear?
I'm not a teddy bear. I am Monokuma! And I am this school's headmaster. Nice to meet you all.
First, let's talk a bit about what your school life here will be like. Now, make no mistake, you few students so full of potential represent the hope of the world. And to protect such splendid hope, you will all live a communal life together solely within the confines of this school. Everyone will live in harmony together and adhere to the rules and regulations of the school. Now then, regarding the end date for this communal life. There isn't one. In other words, you'll all be here until the day you die. Such is the school life you've been assigned. What did he just say? Until the day we die?
Yep.
Oh, but fear not, we have quite an abundant budget, so you won't lack for all the common conveniences.
Hold on a second.
That's the least of our worries right now. Yeah, what the hell? You're saying I have to live here forever? You're screwing with us, right? I am not screwing with you. I'm no liar. Of that you can be 100% sure. And just for your information, you're completely cut off from the outside world. So you don't have to worry about that dirty, dirty land beyond these walls ever again. Cut off? So all those metal plates all over the school, they're there to keep us trapped in here? That's exactly what they're there for. No matter how much you may yell and scream for help, help will not come. So with all of that in mind, feel free to live out your life here with reckless abandon.
Hey, come on.
Come on, what the hell is this? I don't care if the school or whoever else is behind it all, this is just a really bad joke. Yeah, cut this shit out, it isn't funny anymore. You keep saying this is a lie or a joke. A bunch of skeptics, all of you.
What are you gonna do?
But I guess you can't help it, huh? You all grew up in an age where you're taught to doubt your neighbor. Well, you'll have plenty of time to find out whether or not what I say is true. And when that time comes, you'll see with your own eyeballs that I speak the undeniable truth.
Most unfortunate.
Having to live here forever would be quite the problem.
What's this?
Come now, what's the matter with all of you? You decided of your own free will to attend Hope Speak Academy, didn't you? And now, before the entrance ceremony is even finished, you've already decided you want to leave.
Hey!
Oh, but you know, I guess I did forget to mention one thing. There is one way for you to leave the school. Really? As headmaster, I've crafted a special clause for those of you who would like to leave. I call it the graduation clause.
Now then.
Now, let me tell you about this fun little rule. As I mentioned, in order to maintain an environment of harmony here, we rely on a communal lifestyle. And if someone were to disrupt that harmony, they and they alone would be allowed to leave the school. That, my students, is the graduation clause.
What?
What do you mean by disrupt the harmony? Well, you know, if one person were to murder another. Murder?
Yes, indeed.
Stabbing, strangling, bludgeoning, crushing, hacking, drowning, igniting, how you do it doesn't matter. You must kill someone if you want to leave. It's as simple as that.
Well,
Now then, lastly, to commemorate your joyous entry into our school, I have a little something for you. This is our official student handbook. Pretty cool, huh? As you can see, it's fully digital, so naturally we call it the e-handbook. Well, yes, moving on. This handbook is absolutely vital to a healthy school life, so don't lose it. When you start it up, it will display your name. Always make sure you have the right one. Now, this is not your everyday notebook. It has so many uses, many more uses than that. Also, it's completely waterproof. Splash it, wash it, drown it, it'll keep on ticking. And thanks to its space-age design, it can withstand an impact force of up to 10 tons. Very resistant. It contains all of our school regulations, so make sure you review them thoroughly.
you guys.
You'll hear me say this a lot, but any violation of school regulations will not be tolerated. Rules restrict, yes, but they also protect. Society, for example, would be utter chaos without laws.
Yes, indeed.
The same thing applies here, which is why it's crucial we have strict punishments in place for violators. Okay, well, that brings our entrance ceremony to a close.
Bye.
Please enjoy your abundantly dreary school life, and see ya! And with that, he was gone, leaving us all in a state of shock. So, guys, how do you define what we just experienced? How? Why? I don't understand any of this. We have to live here forever, or kill? What just happened?
Calm down.
Everyone, we need to just calm down. First, let's just take a second to summarize everything we just heard. Based on what Monokuma said, we essentially have two choices. Choice number one is that we each stay here living a communal life together until the day we die, and the other choice is, if we want to get out of here alive, we have to kill someone. Right. But killing someone, that's... We were abducted out of nowhere and stuffed into this place meant to look like a school. And now we're supposed to start killing each other? This is just... What is this?
Ridiculous.
A lie is what it is. All these ridiculous things we've heard, this all has to be fake. Right now it doesn't really matter if it's real or fake. What matters is there anyone here who's seriously considering all this? To that, nobody had a response. Keeping quiet myself, I looked around at the others. They all stared at one another, trying to gauge each other's thoughts. I could almost taste the hostility. And that's when it hit me. I realized the true terror hidden within the rules Monokuma had laid out. You must kill someone if you want to leave. Those words had planted vicious thoughts deep within each of us. Each of us became suspicious of everyone else, and we were forced to wonder, is somebody going to betray us? And that was how my new school life began. This school, which had come out of nowhere to raise my hopes so high, it's not a school of hope, it's a school of despair. Prologue, Welcome to Despair. The end. Go. Chapter 1. Okay. To survive. Daily life, it says. But for as heavy as the air felt, all it took to pierce it was her sharp words.
And?
So, what are you going to do now?
Hey,
Just stand around glaring at each other? Her pointed comment was directed at everyone in the room. It helped pull us back to reality. Right, she's right. Sometimes, even if you're nervous or afraid, you just have to step forward. To forget such a simple fact, I can't forgive myself. I'm so ashamed.
You hear me?
Please, someone hit me. I can't forgive myself. Somebody hit me. Punish me.
Huh?
Jesus, if you have time to yell about it, you have time to do something about it.
However,
Perhaps, but what is the mission exactly?
Stupid.
Idiots, to look for a way out, duh.
what the?
And we totally need to find whoever was controlling that stupid bear and beat the hell out of him.
But
Before we do all that, maybe we should take a look at the handbook? It's probably best to check out the school regulations Monokuma mentioned before doing anything else.
this is fine.
True, if we stumble around with no clue what the rules are, something like that might happen again. Shit.
Alright, so then...
Fine. Then let's hurry up and check out the stupid rules already. Okay. So we're opening the handbook. Makoto Negi. After turning on my e-handbook, the first thing that appeared was my name. So, just like Monokuma said, the owner's name showed up front and center. Then, from the main menu that popped up, I selected the school regulations icon. Itemized list appeared on screen. It was the school regulations, in other words, the rules being imposed on us all. Students may reside only within the school. Leaving campus is an unacceptable use of time. Okay. Nighttime is from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Some areas are off limits at night, so please exercise caution. Okay? Sleeping anywhere other than the dormitory will be seen as sleeping in class and punished accordingly. Though I have a feeling that the way in which Monokuma is going to punish sleeping in class, well, it's not what you'd expect. 4. With minimal restrictions, you are free to explore Hope's Peak Academy at your discretion. Violence against Headmaster Monokuma is strictly prohibited, as is destruction of surveillance cameras. Anyone who kills a fellow student and becomes blackened will graduate unless they are discovered. Additional school regulations may be added as necessary. So just as a quick parenthesis, this is the rules for the school and for the students, and it's kind of like the in-fiction rules, but it's also the rules that will most of the time apply to the player's situation as well. I mean, these are actually clues some of the time, and they're going to be important for actually solving the game, so to speak. So the game tries to be mostly consistent, and if and when any of these actually doesn't apply, it's usually for a very good reason. So it's good to kind of know the rules in the back of one's head, because sometimes that will yield a solution to a given problem. And when I finally opened my eyes again, what I saw was... Gah. Huh? Where am I? As if it had become part of my daily routine, I woke up in yet another room I'd never seen before. Okay, so where am I now? You now have access to the Handbook Menu. You can use this to check a variety of information as you play. Open the Handbook Menu by pressing the F1 key. You can use this menu to check the school regulations and character info in the report card section. At certain points, map and truth bullets may not be available. You can also save and load game data under the system section. Finally, press the F2 key to review the transcript. This records all pertinent info, so use this to review comments from everyone involved. Okay, before we move on, now we're in, spoiler alert, this is our room, and we're going to interact with it a little bit. So, without spoiling way too much about what's going to happen in the future, so when the rules have been presented the way they have, there are a bunch of different strategies that one could engage in. Like, if this were real life and we were actually put in this situation, we would have a bunch of different options, I suppose. I would argue that one of the best things that one could possibly do would be to, like, bunch people up together and kind of agree to sleep in the same room or something. Like, the more people who sleep together in the same room, the less likely it is for people to become isolated from one another and picked off if and when someone decides to start killing people, right? And also you could have rules such as everyone's always walking around in pairs and stuff like that. So there is going to be some discussion within this group of people about how to proceed and what the best way forward is. But the stuff that they're going to come up with is kind of, I wouldn't say nonsensical, but for us as, you know, intelligent people, we can pretty quickly figure out that the point of the rules and the agreements that they come up with is not so much to help them survive, it's mostly to create a good backdrop for the game's mechanics and the game's content design. So for instance, the stuff that I suggested about having everyone walking around in groups and people not being alone, or, you know, all these things would actually make it really, really difficult to write potential, you know, mystery stories, right? So obviously, as a player, you're not going to be given the option to do this. You're kind of going to be tagging along and being kind of, you're going to get dragged into a bunch of agreements and a bunch of setups that you probably wouldn't agree to if you actually had a real say. But you could instantly break the game by agreeing with everyone to do all kinds of stuff that would make it impossible for anyone to murder anyone else and get away with it, right? So of course that would get in the way of the game story, so you're not going to be allowed to do that. But just like as a small observation, this is where it starts feeling kind of restricted, and there's no way around it. If you want to tell a story such as the one that this game tries to tell, you have to have these kinds of limitations, because there are certain choices that if the player were allowed to make them, they could just roll curtains immediately. So the decisions of the group need to kind of work in such a way that the rest of the game is still possible. All we can do is adapt. Right? Adapt to living our lives here from now on. Live here? Are you saying we should just accept it?
Do you understand?
A lack of adaptability is a lack of survivability. Survival is not based on who is strongest or the smartest, it comes down to who can adapt.
Actually,
As someone who has come out on top more than once, I have a suggestion.
What?
Huh? What do you mean? We all understand that we're trapped here, which means we will be spending the night. However, you all remember the rule regarding nighttime, right? Nighttime is from 10 PM to 7 AM. Some areas are off limits at night, so please exercise caution. Sleeping anywhere other than the dormitory will be seen as sleeping in class and punished accordingly.
let's see.
So regarding this nighttime, I think we need to add a rule of our own. What do you mean? Going out at nighttime should be prohibited altogether. The school regulations do not actually tell us not to go out at night. I would like to make it official. But why?
Are you okay with this?
The way things are now, every time night comes, we will all start to get worried and anxious. We will all be afraid someone might try to come kill us. What? If we have to worry about that night after night for who knows how long, it will wear us down in no time.
I see.
So you're suggesting we limit our activity at night as a kind of preventative measure.
Indeed.
However, unlike the other rules, nobody can be forced to comply. We all have to agree to follow it.
What can we do?
I see what you mean, but I think I can agree to that. It's like the little goth Lolita said, without something like that, we're just gonna self-destruct. Yeah, you say that, but again, the reason this is happening is not for the good of the group, it's actually for the good of the game designers. The point of it is to make sure that there's this stretch of time where the player is going to be confined to their room. I mean, how much do you want to bet, dear viewer, that when shit gets nasty in this game, it's going to happen during the nighttime, and then you're going to wake up to a corpse. Anyway, on behalf of all the men here, I agree to comply. Well, thanks for that, Taka.
What?
Hey, you can't just decide to speak for us.
This is fine.
So everyone is in agreement. Good. Then, if you will excuse... Yeah, these are mechanics we've seen in other games, right? Games like the aforementioned Persona games from Atlus. Also keep in mind that when you talk with a classmate, time will pass. When you're finished, you will automatically return to your room. So that's an interesting little thing. So you kind of do things with classmates, and then eventually you get sent back to your room. Why do they do this? Well, it's because they want to make sure that you're always starting from the same starting position and ending in the same starting position, so to speak, between these different things. And it's because you can kind of do them out of order. They put you in the room so they can basically shuffle around the positions and various other things in the world outside your room, right? So you're forced back into your room, and then stuff happens outside your room, and then you're allowed to go out again. That's a short explanation. After a certain amount of time passes, your free time will come to an end and the story will progress. Mind you, when they talk about free time coming to an end, time in this game is once again action points. It's not actual real time, it's action points. It's a sort of abstracted resource that you can spend, okay? If you'd prefer not to engage in free time, you can always choose to simply go to sleep to skip it. We wouldn't recommend this approach, but if you absolutely must press forward with the story, then... Anyway, why don't you try it out by spending some time with Miss Sayaka Maizono? She's the ideal partner to begin with. Okay, is she in her room, though? That is the question. It does seem like she's there, yes. Press the doorbell. So anxious, really afraid. Should I talk to Sayaka for a while? Go see who else is around. Okay, if I do that, now can I hang out with these other people? No. They're not giving me that choice. It's a false choice situation. So they're introducing me to the dialogue option, but she's the only character I'm going to be getting that dialogue option with, so it's a false choice situation in that whether or not I find someone else who's around, I'm pretty sure that they won't actually want to hang out with me. So for the first time I do this, I have to spend time with Sayaka and nobody else. Are you going to try to cheer me up? Sorry for making you take time out of your day like this. I did my best to comfort Sayaka. Sayaka and I grew a little closer today. Would you like to give Sayaka a present? Yes, definitely, but then I don't really have that many presents, do I? This is my list of presents, and because I've not been playing with the Mono machine and I've not had the possibility to kind of pick up presents in many other ways either, I'm going to have a very limited number of presents here. I do think I might have a couple just because I finished the prologue, so I get this thing. If I press the left mouse button, yeah, that's all it says. I have the school crest, so I don't know if it qualifies as a very good gift. So the different characters will react differently to different gifts, so the idea is that you're supposed to get to know them better to figure out which gifts are the most appropriate to give them, right? Do you think you could make time for the two of us to talk? So I haven't actually reverse engineered the balancing, but I think that as would be expected, if you choose the right gift to give to one of these characters, they are more likely to open up to you and take you to the next level of your relationship with them than if you get the wrong gift or don't give them a gift at all. The closer we get, the stronger that smile of hers makes me. I was glad to feel that way. Sayaka's report card has been updated based on your experience with her. You just unlocked the skill Melodious Voice. Give yourself a pat on the back. You've earned it. The skill stuff is going to make sense later, but that's a reward, obviously, for interacting. And once we were all done, I headed back to my room for a little while. And now it's night time. Right. Usually you have enough time for 2 of these interactions in a day.
This is a school announcement. It is now 10 p.m. As such, it is officially nighttime. Soon the doors to the dining hall will be locked, and entry at that point is strictly prohibited. Okay then. Sweet dreams, everyone. Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Oh. Monokuma voice acting is good. Tomorrow I'm going to find some kind of clue, he says, I swear. Okay, so we go to sleep. As my eyelids slid closed, the conversation I'd had with Sayaka that morning began to replay. In a way, it's almost frustrating, even if I understand where her desperation is coming from. I can't share in it. The pressure she's under is way different from anything a normal high schooler like me goes through. She didn't just stumble into the school the way I did, so I can't say I feel things the way she does compared to her, no, compared to everyone else here. There's no doubt I just don't match up. I guess that might explain my own frustration. Morning has come. What should I do today? So we're back to free time, and this time I hope it's proper free. I'll leave the area. Let's see if we can find someone else to hang out with. Okay, we have that guy over there. That's cool. There's Sayaka. I want to hang out with that fashionista lady. There's Toko. She's in the room. And who else is there to talk to? There's that guy. This is kind of fun, so trying to figure out where everyone is. Just wanted to get the opportunity to show you this mechanic. So here's the school store. Right. The almighty Mono Mono machine. Okay. This is pretty simple. So this is the Mono Mono machine. It's pretty straightforward how it works. What happens is, I get to put coins in, and then I kind of turn the knob, and then I get one of these balls out, and these balls are going to kind of contain presents. Pretty straightforward, right? And these are the presents that we've spoken about before, and I can use them to kind of make friends. So you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Hello, Love Disney 1996V. There's a certain twist to this, but I'll show you only after we've done the first roll. So I'm going to put a coin in, and then I'm going to push the button, and something came out. Okay, so I got an item. We're going to check out what that item is in a bit. Now, if you look in the bottom right of the screen, you see that it says repeat percentage 1.09. What that means is this. If we go to my gifts, let's see if we can find that thing that we found. Sorry, this takes a while. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? Okay, blueberry perfume. This is what I got last time around, right? So the thing is, as this list gets populated, as I find more and more gifts and get them through other ways, the repeat percentage is going to go up, because basically the repeat percentage is based on how many of the gifts I already have, right? So as I collect more and more gifts, except for the ones that I get for special events or whatever, as I collect more and more gifts, the repeat percentage goes up, and the repeat percentage is the likelihood that I'm going to get something that I've already gotten once, right? Now, if I put one coin in, that's going to stay the same, and the problem is I only have one coin, so I can't really illustrate what happens if I put in more coins, but I can put in multiple coins to lower the repeat percentage. So I can basically buy myself a better probability of getting an item that I haven't gotten before. Sounds good, right? But the problem is, in this game, and even more so in the sequel, it is extremely poorly balanced. By that I mean I think that I have to put in one coin to have the repeat percentage drop by like 1 percentage point or something like that, or actually less than 1 percentage point. Why is this a problem? Well, most of the time, like in the absolute vast majority of circumstances, like I have a hard time imagining a circumstance where this wouldn't be the case. It actually makes more sense to keep rolling one coin at a time than to put multiple coins in. Right? So it's kind of really stupidly balanced from a purely mathematical point of view. And the most efficient way of playing is also an extremely dull and boring way of playing the game. So I'm just going to put the one coin in, and I'm going to roll it again. I'm going to get another thing. Right? And I got an item that I didn't before because my repeat percentage is pretty low. Right? And up until I have something like a 99 repeat percentage, it's just mathematically a bad idea to spend lots of these coins just to lower my repeat percentage a little bit. Like, it's a lot easier to explain once I have more of them, and maybe I'll get to a point where I do. But basically, what I think should be the case is that you should just get a much better trade-in value in repeat percentage terms for these coins, because otherwise the best way to play the game is also the most frustrating and annoying way of playing the game, and that's never a good way of designing games. So there you have it. There we go. There's the R key. Oh, doorbell. Huh? When I opened my eyes, they darted immediately to the clock. It's almost 10 o'clock. I fell asleep without even realizing it. Nighttime's about to start. So, how come someone's here?
Sorry.
I'm really sorry to come by so late. Sayaka? Sayaka, what are you doing out so late? That's when I noticed. Her body was trembling. Is everything okay?
It was so strange.
Sorry to bother you, but something really weird just happened. Something weird?
Makoto.
Just a little while ago, I was laying down in my room, and all of a sudden my door started rattling and shaking. Her voice sounded like all the air had been squeezed out of her lungs. Just hearing her talk made me tense up.
I was so scared.
It was like someone was trying to force the door open. My door was locked, so they couldn't get in, of course. But they started shaking the door harder and harder. I was so scared I couldn't even move. So what happened? After a while, it just stopped. I let some time go by, then I got up and opened the door to check outside, but there was nobody there. Someone tried to force their way into your room? But who would do something like that?
I mean...
It's not like I'm suspicious of anyone here, but still, it makes me nervous. What if something like that happened in the middle of the night? What would I do then? You don't have to worry about that, right? I mean, we can't go outside during nighttime. But that's just a promise we made, right? If someone decided to break that promise, then why don't you stay in my room tonight? Would that make you feel a little better? Huh? All it said in the school regulations was that we had to sleep in the dorm rooms, right? It didn't state specifically which room each person had to sleep in, so...
Hey,
But two people sharing one room is, you know, as if that's a problem right now, by the way. Oh geez, I'm sorry, I didn't even think about that. Honestly, that didn't even cross my mind. Well, of course it didn't cross your mind, because it's a fully sensible thing to do. You should all sleep like 4 people in one room or something, just for safety's sake. Jesus. No, I know, me either. It's not even that I mind the idea, but if you don't mind, could we maybe switch rooms, just for the night? Switch rooms? If it'll help put your mind at ease, then it's totally fine with me. But I don't mind you staying in my room, but are you sure you're okay with me staying in yours? That doesn't, like, concern you? It's fine, I trust you. In that case, then... Oh. Bell.
This is a school announcement. It is now
10 p.m.
As such, it is officially nighttime. Soon the doors to the dining hall will be locked. And entry... Okay then.
Okay.
Sweet.
It's sleepy time? Oh man, it's already nighttime. Okay, so it's settled. I'll head to your room right now. Oh, if we're gonna trade rooms, we'd better trade keys too. Ah, that's right. We'll have to trade keys. Again?
like I said, I'm psychic.
Huh? Aren't you gonna say you were just kidding? What if I wasn't just kidding? Something resembling a smile had made its way to her face. Thank goodness. It looks like she's already started to get back to normal. Okay, we'd better trade keys then.
Okay.
Yep, let's do it. We exchanged keys, and when I looked back up at her again, there was another worried expression there. Makoto, please be careful. If someone comes to the door, don't open it no matter what. I won't. The same goes for you, Sayaka. No matter who it is, don't open your door for anyone. Even if I'm sure it's you, I absolutely won't open it. Otherwise, what's the point of even switching? Oh, by the way, just so you know, my bathroom door tends to get stuck. There's a little trick to opening it. You have to turn the knob, then lift up the door while you pull it out. Just do that and the door should open, no problem. Okay, but the showers don't work during nighttime anyway, right? Oh, that's right, I totally forgot. But I guess I might use it when I get up in the morning, so thank you. Okay, well, I better get going. See you tomorrow, Sayaka.
Hey,
Oh, and about what I said before. When I said I was psychic, it really was a joke. Honestly, I'm just very perceptive. Yeah, I know. Good night, then. See you in the morning. Sayaka gave me one last parting smile, and I headed off to my room. I looked around as soon as I got out into the hall. Everyone else's doors were closed. There was no sign of life. Good, there's nobody here. Making sure no one was around to spot me, I rushed into Sayaka's room. So this is Sayaka's room. It really doesn't look any different from mine. It smells nice though. Does the bathroom work? Yeah, the girls' private bathrooms have locks on them. I'm a little reluctant to go in. What key would you use? I don't... So do I just click the bed? I go to bed. Knowing Sayaka slept on it makes me look forward to trying it out for myself. Oh, look at that. See, does she still have her sewing kit? Excellent, the map of the body's vital organs. Oof. Vicious. Kind of weird to dig through other people's trash, but I couldn't help taking a quick peek. There wasn't any doubt about it. It was the DVD with her name on it that we'd found in the AV room. That reminds me, I never did get a chance to find out what was in her video. But it's probably best if I wait until she brings it up again. I don't think Sayaka would like me snooping around here too much. I should probably go to bed soon. As I lowered myself onto Sayaka's bed, a pleasant fragrance enveloped me. Sayaka's scent. So the reason this is happening is because I interacted with all the important things in the room that I had to interact with. I saw the DVD and I clicked the bed and I did all the stuff. So once I'd done all the things that in some way was part of the trigger conditions, I immediately was sent to bed by the game logic. Sayaka's scent. Maybe it'll bring me some sweet. Are we still missing some people? Yeah. Sayaka and Byakuya aren't here yet. I don't know about Byakuya, but I would definitely put Sayaka in the model high schooler category. So for her to be so late...
What?
What's going on? Did something happen?
Yo.
Hey man, have you seen Sayaka? Why would I have? I just came straight from my room to here. Did she forget about our breakfast promise?
However,
I got the sense she always has her stuff together. Listening to everyone talk like that, a small dark speck of unease rose up inside of me. That speck started to grow quickly. I need to go. I have to check on her. The words had barely left my lips before I flew into the hall. Where I headed first was my room, where I'd let Sayaka stay for a single night. Where she was supposed to be safe. But over the course of that one night, the room had been completely transformed. What the hell? This is the replica sword I brought back for self-defense. It's been taken out of its sheath. More importantly, where's Sayaka? Okay, let's try to find her. She's not in here. Let's see if we can just find her. Maybe she's inside the bathroom. Let's check it out. I better check the bathroom. Let's take a look inside. It took me a second to realize that I was screaming. What I saw dug its way through my eyes and buried itself in my brain. And then, everything went black. Yeah. Stuff just got serial. Okay, so this is the part where we're going to make a little bit of a break to summarize what has happened so far, because we've been playing the game for a very long time now, but we've not really done any deconstruction of it whatsoever. So I'm going to bring up my little helper, so to speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this window, and I'm going to open a piece of software known as Xmind. This is actually a free piece of software to use that anyone can basically get. So now we're kind of at the halfway point in a sense, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a little bit. So let's talk about what we've seen so far. What I've done here in Xmind, this is a mind mapping program, just to show a little bit of what it can do. Like if you want, you can keep adding a basically arbitrary number of topics that can be nested inside other topics, where you can kind of keep track of various things. Most of you have done a mind map before, so this is just a piece of software that allows you to do this. And this is actually a very useful tool when doing high-level game design of any kind. Yeah, let's just look at the stuff that I prepared before even starting this game. And we're going to stick mostly to the stuff that we know something about at this point. Now, you may have noticed in the transition that just happened that it said something on the splash screen called, it said in the bottom left, Deadly Life. And before that, we'd seen a different splash screen a few hours back that said Daily Life. And both of these allude to the general game structure. It's divided between Deadly Life and Daily Life, or the other order. Generally, it's Daily Life first and then Deadly Life. Deadly Life is the segment that begins when a body's been found, when someone's been murdered, right? And Daily Life is the segment where you have the free time and you get to just socialize and get to know the different characters. It's a little bit like how the again aforementioned Persona games handle their own slice of life elements. Okay, so if you want to make any sort of like fusion type video game, or other type of game, it's actually not really that difficult to fuse two genres together. What you need to make sure is to keep some sort of track of how these two genres and these game modes kind of interact with each other, what they have in common, what they don't have in common, and what kind of stuff gets kind of sent from one to the other. So let's talk a little bit about features and mechanics. That's a good place to start generally. So basically, we have a set of mechanics that apply out of class trial, and then some that apply in the class trial. Now, we've not really discussed the class trial so far. It's something that's going to happen later. We're not going to talk too much about it, but it has its own mechanics, and that's why I made this subdivision. So out of class trial, we've already seen some exploration, right? So this is when you go around, look at the environment, you click random stuff, you get the background information, the fleshing out of the story, and all this other stuff, all the fluffy things, if you will. That is also the mode where you initiate certain other things, including the Mono machine, right? So that's kind of its own mechanic, the thing where I put coins in and got rewards back in return. So that's kind of its own thing. That's an out-of-class trial mechanic that gets initiated through exploration, and this one then yields generic presents. Generic presents are, well, generic ones. They're not really tied necessarily to the progression of the game. Then you have other types of presents, like that one that we tried to give to Junko before, but we were not allowed by the game system. Those are non-generic presents, and those you don't get from the Mono machine. At least I don't think you do. No, you usually get them because they're somehow connected to the critical path. Then you had the hanging out with friends mechanic, right? Where we had the dialogue, and then we had the present giving, and then we improved our relationship, which then yields passive abilities and SP. Now the passive abilities and SP are things that go back to the in-class trial set of mechanics that we see over here. So once we go to the class trial, I'll just kind of give you a brief overview. You're going to kind of, in the trial context, after you've done the investigation and gathered clues and stuff, you're supposed to try to figure out alongside your classmates who the killer is, right? So that is like a completely different set of mechanics, and those mechanics are kind of made easier often by the passive abilities that you can earn through socializing with your friends. And that is the point of connection between the out-of-class trial and in-class trial, in that hanging out with characters is going to teach you more about the characters, give you some hints as to their personalities, and it's also going to give you abilities that you can use inside the class trials. So yeah, that's kind of the high-level connection between the two. We're going to expand this one a little bit more later when we look at passive abilities and active abilities that apply in the class trial, right? Inside Xmind, you can do stuff like hyperlinking. So for instance, if I click here, go to topic passive abilities / SP sheet 1, I can click that, and that actually opens up a different part of the mind map. So you can actually kind of, when you make a reference to something else, you can have a hyperlink so that you automatically jump to that part of it. So we've already jumped into the resources container. So let's just stick with the out-of-class trial stuff again. So what resources have we identified so far in the game? Outside of the class trial, we've identified time, right? So when we had the free time segment, you could only fit so many hangout sessions with friends in a given day, right? That means that you could see time as a resource with 2 units of time per day, right? So that's a resource. Then you have social point thingies. Now in the sequel, that's actually it's articulated a little bit differently than in this game. In this game, you just keep adding new sheets to this to these like personnel entries or whatever you call them. Like I forget what they're called. Let's just open up the game again real quick and just there we go. Yeah, the report card, that's what it's called. So you add new pages to it. So in a sense, you could conceivably see that as like a resource in its own right, even though it's not necessarily one that you expend. If anything, you kind of they tick up, but it's kind of a good thing that they do. Like, you can see it as a resource, but you don't have to because it's not spendable. Indeed, the actual gifts could also be put here in resources. So I just threw this together pretty quickly, so it's not in any way complete. I just wanted to illustrate a way of actually breaking down the components in the game. And these are the categories that I've kind of chosen to use. They're not absolute ones. Like, I've not opened up the game's code and looked at how the game's developers have actually categorized stuff. This is just what I do when I reverse engineer stuff, and I try to figure out the least bad category to put certain things in. Then we have stuff like generic content. So this is stuff that just kind of exists a little bit out of context. So you have stuff like the characters. You have the main character, which is Makoto. You have Monokuma. I didn't fill in this list, but you could basically list all the characters here. You have the generic presence that we talked about before. Presence not awarded by the critical path or other special actions. Then you have the environment. So this is the generic container, but then the generic container is actually the least interesting one in this game, because the most interesting thing about the content in this game is how it changes and gets reorganized based on the progression of the game. So if we look at the game flow and content structure, the game is organized into chapters, and let's say chapter 1, which we're in the process of playing, has the prologue, which we played, has the daily life segment, which we just finished, right, and it has the deadly life segment, which we're about to begin. Which has the investigation that I'm just about to start playing, and it has the class trial that we've touched on a little bit. But in daily life we did the exploration, but there was also other stuff that went into it, right? I just didn't get around to putting all this in, and I thought, you know, people would get the point anyway. So the reason I want to organize everything into chapters is that, you know, from what we can tell right now, Sayaka was just murdered, right? And if you have a game structure where A, characters get killed, and B, we've already bumped into some doors that were locked and couldn't really be reached. If that changes during the course of the game, if the game unlocks, you know, new floors in the school, new rooms, and so on and so forth, all these things, like, we couldn't put all these things into just a generic list that can be read from top to bottom and have a very easy time of figuring out the context in which these things exist, because everything exists in a context, right? Over time, some characters are no longer going to be around, and then, you know, it's probably a good idea to keep track of which characters are around at any given time, which rooms are available, which specific things unlock, and doing it by chapter seemed to be like a pretty, you know, good way to go. So this is just like a super high level view into how you could do this kind of thing, and you will probably be kind of double tracking certain things. By that I mean there are probably certain things that you will log both here in the generic content, but also up here in the game flow and content structure. For instance, I don't know, you could have a generic present that also exists up here if it's only made available at a certain point, and if you want to kind of log that somehow, but it's like it's generic after that point. Or if you want to, I don't know, looking at the environment, for instance, you could have the environment as a generic entity, like this is what the environment looks like as a default, but then you could have that same environment again in the context of chapter 1. So, I mean, the situation we're in right now is actually a very good one to use as an example, not truth bullets yet. So, for instance, we just found Sayaka in our bathroom, seemingly dead. Our room is messed up beyond recognition, right? It doesn't really look all that nice. Small spoiler alert, once the class trial is over and everything's taken care of, it's going to get reset back to normal again. And before it was in that state, it was also in its normal generic state. So taking something that has a generic permutation and double logging it in the chapter where it also has a very chapter-specific permutation, that makes perfect sense. So you're going to have entities, mechanics, features, whatever, exist on multiple places in this tree, so to speak. And that's another reason for using the links that we mentioned, right? So yeah, that's basically it. we'll return for this later. So I want to open this real quick. We're just going to start with the investigation, and one of the things that's going to pop up is these truth bullets, but we're going to talk more about them in the game proper because it's going to make more sense. So back to the game. No, the real thing has just begun. The real thing?
Now then.
Are you ready? Allow me to explain the second part of the rule regarding graduation. Just like I explained before, you must kill someone if you want to leave. However, even if you do that, there's still one more part to the agreement you have to uphold, remember?
Then
You're referring to the rule number 6 of school regulations. Anyone who kills a fellow student and becomes blackened will graduate unless they are discovered, right?
In other words,
It's not enough to just kill someone, you have to actually get away with it, which naturally means you need a system in place to assess whether or not it's been gotten away with. So, a certain amount of time after murder has taken place, a class trial will begin. Okay, gang, it's not a certain amount of time, I guarantee it. It's when the game logic says so. The class trial is only going to start when I have done all the things that I need and found all the clues that I need to actually be able to beat the trial. The game does not back you into a corner. It doesn't allow you to go into a trial without the tools required to actually solve the puzzle. Unless, of course, that's part of the critical path and the intention of the game's designers, because they're dicks. But generally, no. This is not real time. Class trial. Yep, it will begin a few hours after the murder. Everyone will gather together, including the blackened who committed the murder, and they and the spotless students will all engage in one big debate showdown.
during the trial, you'll have to present your arguments about who you think the blackened is. And once everything comes to an end, the outcome will be decided by popular vote. If the answer you only the one that disturbed your peace will be punished.
Sorry, I skipped that. If the answer you arrived at is correct, only the one that disturbed your peace will be punished. The rest may continue their communal life.
However, if you choose poorly,
If you choose poorly,
then the one who got away with murder will survive, and the rest of you will receive your punishment.
so basically, unless we find the real killer, everyone basically gets killed and they get to graduate and win, basically. So this is how do I put it? This is a system that kind of, in many ways, makes a bit more sense than what you would find in a game such as, you know, the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney games, if you've ever played those, where you're supposed to be a lawyer, and the legal system they have is like really contrived. Like, in most modern legal systems, all you need to do is actually prove that your client, or whoever you're representing, might be yourself, didn't actually commit the crime, right? Whereas in Phoenix Wright, for various reasons, you not only have to do that, you also have to find the real killer, which is a bit bizarre. So with this kind of contrivance that they have here, there are no real edge cases, you know, no getting around the fact that unless you find the real killer, like, there's no scenario where it's all the same whether you actually solve the murder or not. It's not like there's any yellow light outcome. It's green light, red light. Either you get the killer and you get to kind of proceed, or you fail at identifying the killer, at which point everyone dies. So that kind of, in some senses, simplifies the whole thing a little bit, and it makes the premise in a way a little bit more believable. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but because this is a contrived situation where this Monokuma character can basically set whatever rules he wants, he's also fully capable of making it however weird he wants, without us as observers feeling that it's just like really, really stupid and it would never work like that in real life. So if you see a legal system like the one in Phoenix Wright, you're gonna scratch your head and go like, well, how are prisons not overfilled with innocents who just didn't manage to falsify an accusation, right? Incidentally, some would argue that that is happening in Japan, but anyway, yeah, so that's just like a little observation. This whole premise allows for a set of mechanics that wouldn't really work if we were pretending to be out in some sort of real world, real life legal system.
Which of course means your school life will come to an end. As far as class trial rules go,
Well,
What exactly is this punishment, he asked? Well, to put it simply, it's execution. Execution?
What?
And by execution you mean
solution is execution. Execution! Electric chair! Zzz, zzz, poison gas! Torn apart like a paper plane in a hurry!
So, to make sure I understand, if we get the culprit right, then only they die, but if we get it wrong, all the rest of us get executed? What a smart little chimpanzee you are. Look at you, implying you didn't do it without actually saying it. So it's basically what the outside world calls a lay judge system, or an inquisition type thing. Which means you'll be deciding who you think the killer is, but judge carefully because all your lives are on the line. Oh, let me just add the rule I just described to your handbook. Make sure to keep it in mind. The new rule has been added to the regulations menu. Wait, hold on a second. You're freaking insane, you know that? Hmm?
What the?
Class trial, what the hell is that? I don't want anything to do with it.
What's this?
Why not?
Stop it!
What do you mean, why not? Why do I have to waste my time trying to figure out who murdered someone? What? Are you saying you're not going to participate in the trial? Only punishment awaits such blasphemy.
What the hell are
What?
you talking about?
Punishment? I might, I don't know, throw you in a deep, dark, scary prison or something?
Shut the hell up!
Say whatever you want, I'm not going to be part of this.
I don't believe it!
Don't be so selfish.
Stop it!
You're the one being selfish, kill whoever you want. It's got nothing to do with me. The evil standing here before me, I'm trembling with fear.
Shing!
But I won't give in to such evil. It's my style to stick it out and resist till the very end. If you really want to get out of here, you'll have to go through me first. As he said that, he came charging at us, although it was more of a waddle. But then,
Are you enjoying yourself now?
Are you? Violence against Headmaster Monokuma is not allowed! You violated a school regulation! I invoke the mighty summon spell! Help! To me, godly spear, Gunmir!
oh boy. We seem to have another corpse on our hands.
This wasn't supposed to... Why? Me?
Suddenly, right at the end, her eyes shot wide open. And just like that, she never moved again. Okay, so we're off to the crime scene. Okay, looking through the Monokuma file, first thing that happens with every case. The victim was Sayaka Maizono. The time of death is estimated to be around 1:30 a.m. The body was discovered in Makoto's room in the dormitory. All evidence suggests that the death took place in the bathroom. The cause of death was a stab wound to the abdomen. There was also an injury to her right wrist. Specifically, the wrist appears to have suffered a fracture. We have no choice but to push forward if we want to find out what happened. Somehow I have to find out the truth so that we can all survive. And for Sayaka, I have to find out how she was killed. Monokuma File 1 has been added to the Truth Bullets section of your handbook. Alright, give me 1 second, be right back. Okay, I am back. So, Truth Bullets then. So, kind of, how do I put it? Truth Bullets are essentially itemized pieces of logic. They are basically used the same way as items are, like pieces of evidence are in the Phoenix Wright games. So someone is going to make a statement at some point during the trial or whatever, where I can point to something that I have in my inventory and use it to rebut the argument. So it's kind of a bit of a logic inverse parsing sort of. It's kind of like I find something, I find a statement that someone is speaking that is inconsistent with some sort of irrefutable evidence that I have on file, and then I use that evidence to counter the statement made, basically. So during the investigation phase of the game, the point is to kind of add truth bullets, which you then bring with you into the trial. Sometimes you get truth bullets during the trial, sometimes they get updated during the trial. You know, there are lots of ways of getting truth bullets. But you're always told when you've gotten one, and you can always kind of read them at your own pace and figure out, you know, what they mean and try to kind of speculate. This game, it's actually quite possible to put together a pretty strong case, or like kind of figure out the scenario and have a pretty solid theory just by actually examining the evidence. Like you can have a good idea of who killed who without waiting for some sort of like Deus Ex Machina or some plot contrivances that happen during trials exclusively. I mean, there is some of that, especially in the later game, because they start jumping the shark eventually, but I really like how, especially with the very first game in the series, it's not really that contrived. I'm quite impressed with it. And often I got to feel really smart because I figured out certain aspects before the game explicitly told me about them. Anyway, let's see if I'm allowed to leave. Leave the gym, yes. I'm going to go straight to the crime scene because I think that's the most important part. Looking at her made it painfully clear it wasn't a dream or an illusion. Also, she has pink purplish blood. What's up? Maybe it's like a censorship thing, like to make it a little bit less gruesome. No. She lost everything that made her her, Sayaka. All at once I was overcome with dizziness, nausea, and the urge to burst into tears. But I can't hesitate now. Why did Sayaka have to die? I have to uncover the truth. I have to find out what happened. I wanted to give up. I wanted to collapse, but that thought held me up and supported me. So, it's time to do some investigating inside the bathroom. Okay, shower head, start from the top. Water for the showers gets turned off at nighttime. Good to know. Sayaka's body. Told myself I simply couldn't face what I saw, but now's no time to think like that. I pulled out the Monokuma file to verify what it said about her body. Some sort of sharp object has been thrust into her stomach. That must have been the killing blow. But whatever they used to kill her, where they get it, that's definitely something I should look into later. And according to the Monokuma file, Sayaka's right wrist is broken. Her wrist does look swollen and bloody, that's for sure. But there's something sort of glittery there on the wrist too, right? Where her wrist is all swollen, there's something glittery. That definitely concerns me. Another thing that concerns me is there's some blood on her left index finger, but that's it. The palms of both her hands are totally spotless, so how come only her left finger? Stab wound in her stomach is what killed her, so when she broke her wrist, that must have happened earlier on. I mean, how would her wrist get broken after she'd already been killed? So it's very possible she broke her wrist during the struggle. The killer attacked Sayaka in the main room, which is when her wrist got broken. After that, the killer cornered her in the bathroom, where they inflicted a deadly wound. Okay. Look past Sayaka to the wall behind her. And there I saw, written in blood were the numbers 11037. Did Sayaka do this? Interesting. Okay, then I guess that's about it for now. So let's leave here. But that knife should probably be followed up on. Looks like you found it, right, Makoto? The bloody numbers? That's most likely Sayaka's dying message. Never seen something written in blood before. It really was her final message. It's as if she wrote it with life herself.
Right.
Life itself. We often talk like an aspiring poet, but the numbers she wrote, what do they mean? 11037. I have no idea what that could possibly mean.
So
The way she wrote the numbers make me think she wanted to use her body to block them. If she wrote them in that location while she was sitting the way we found her, it means she must have wrote them by turning only her hand toward the wall. If you were to write something in that position, do you know what the result would be? The result?
well,
Think about it. You're not going to tell me?
Makoto.
You need to uncover the mystery of this case yourself, otherwise the case will end and you will remain unconvinced. I have no idea what you're trying to say, but it's obvious you're not going to tell me. Okay, dying message. Honestly, I have no idea. Okay. I know who I should talk to when it comes to numbers. Who better to ask than the ultimate programmer?
Makoto.
There's one other thing I wanted to ask you about. Do you know how the door to your bathroom got broken? Broken? You mean how it gets stuck?
What?
Gets stuck. Yeah, I guess I'm the only one, but the door doesn't fit in the frame quite right. When I first tried to use it, I thought it was just locked. But once you learn the trick, it opens no problem. Bathroom door frame has been added to the truth bullets section of your handbook.
Correct.
So the door doesn't quite fit the frame, but actually I'm referring to the broken doorknob. Huh? The doorknob?
That's right.
You didn't notice? Well, just try closing the bathroom door. I'm sure you'll see right away what I'm talking about. Did what Kyoko said and shut the bathroom door. Huh? The doorknob? What the heck? The doorknob's practically about to fall off. Why is it like this? Someone must have used a screwdriver or something similar to unscrew it. Whatever it was, it's obvious this was intentional. What? It was intentional? Why would someone want to do that?
So
I guess maybe they were trying to get the door unlocked and ended up breaking the whole thing. But my bathroom doesn't have a lock on it. Only the girls' bathrooms can lock, right? She stood there for a while, lost in thought. Then apparently struck with a sudden realization, she shot a question at me.
Just a second.
I have just one more question for you. You mentioned earlier that your bathroom door would get stuck, right? Did you tell anyone about that? Oh, well, I did tell Sayaka about it last night when we switched rooms. So what you're saying is only you and Sayaka knew about it. Interesting. She had the slightest hint of a smirk on her face. I got the sense that she was really starting to get into all this.
I see.
Then that clears that up. Huh? What clears what up? I'm so lost.
Goodbye.
Well, see you later. As if forgetting I was even there, ever even there, she suddenly turned and left the room. Bathroom doorknob has been added to the truth bullet section of your handbook. I still don't really understand any of this, but I've already given my room a good once-over. Maybe I should look around somewhere else. Let's do this. Welcome back to part 3 of Game Designer Plays Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. We're about to go into our first class trial. This whole thing took a lot longer than I thought it would. It's ended up being about like 90% Let's Play and maybe 10% analysis. Oh, hey Stoic Nord, really happy to have you in the chat. I'm just about to hop into the class trial. I hope volumes and everything are still a go. I'm just gonna have to do a very edited version for YouTube, I guess, later. I was really torn, I felt, between, doing something that was like short and sweet and whatever, and providing enough context so people would have any idea whatsoever what the hell was going on with this game. Because if all I did was talk about the the game logic and the content and all this other stuff and how everything's organized, that would be fun for the people who had an interest in that and knew enough about the game, but people who didn't wouldn't. So I think I'm probably gonna have 2 sets of these videos when I'm done, like on YouTube. I'll probably have the long version for whoever thinks it's fun to hear me tripping over words while reading off a prompter. And then I'll have the shorter version for the people who just want to see the the stuff. So I'm just gonna go visit my X-Mind again before we hop into the game proper again. I don't know if everyone's seen this already, but yeah, I wanted to have a look. So what have we discussed already? One of the cool features about X-Mind is you can do this collapse all thing in case you just kind of lose track of where you were or whatever. So where was it? Collapse all. There we go. So yeah, what have we gone through already? So let's go back to game flow and generic structure. So chapters, chapter 1, prologue, daily life, and now we've done deadly life. We've done the investigation bit, and we've gathered our truth bullets, and we're about to hop into the class trial, and the class trial is going to have mostly generic mechanics. I mean, they're mostly the same for all of the class trials, but that's not an absolute truth. Especially at the beginning, like, they drip feed new mechanics, they introduce new mechanics over time, so the first class trial is not going to have all of the mechanics that you will have towards the end of the game. So yeah, eventually you're going to get to a point where basically all the class trials have all the different features represented in one form or another. I think for the very first one that's not true. Not really that much new on the resources. Front in class trials we're going to have some new resources. I can already look at them a little bit. Health, focus gauge, truth bullets, passive abilities, and SP. We'll get back to those. Features and mechanics. Passive abilities, active abilities. Yes. Okay. So we'll return to this once we've gotten to the class trial. Right now, out of context, is not going to make that much sense. So, yeah, let's hop back into the game. This is so cool. So the change in aesthetic is just so cool with the music and everything, and it's just like really pumping and whatever. So, okay, we have a little ticker down there telling us stuff. It's mostly flavored. It's not the most interesting stuff, but we do have access to our e-handbook, so we can kind of go through our truth bullets and look into all this stuff, so we have a sense of what was going on before we jump into the whole thing, and whatever. So we can still do that. We can look at our presence for some reason. That's not really relevant. We can go to the system, save, and perhaps most important is this whole thing with the skills. We've not really been through the skills yet. So here we can set all the skills that we've earned through the various interactions, right? So I have melodious voice, for instance, and I got this one from my relationship with Sayaka, I think. So I can click this one in, and it takes up SP, as you can see in the top left-ish. It uses 3 out of 10 SP, and my understanding is that all the different characters have one of these each, like one special skill each, or maybe there's a couple, I'm not sure. But they also yield SP when you interact with them, so even if you don't have their ability yet, or will ever get their ability, because they managed to die or something, or kill someone, you can still get SP from interacting with them, so it's not really ever really 100% wasted. Even low combos will increase the tempo. Effective during the bullet time battle, cost 4 SP. Okay, so right now you're doing this blind. As a player, you're a bit blind. You don't even know what is like the boxes that you're ticking. But since I played the game before, I can make informed choices, and I also don't really have to make any exclusive choices because I have only 2 abilities and enough SP to cover both. So I've equipped both of them. They're both passive, and I go finish preparations, and it's class trial time.
Let's begin with a basic explanation of the class trial. So, your votes will determine the results. If you can figure out who done it, then only they will receive punishment. But if you pick the wrong one, then I'll punish everyone besides the blackened, and the one that deceived everyone else will graduate.
And the killer really is one of us, right?
Of course.
Okay then. Everyone, close your eyes. And whoever did it, raise your hand.
Don't be a goddamn idiot. Why the hell would they raise their hand?
Before we move on and start the trial, can I ask a question real quick? What's going on with those pictures?
I'd feel awful if they got left out just because they died. Friendship penetrates even death's barrier. Friendship penetrates?
Okay, but there were only 15 of us to be.
Oh, no reason. It's just that our little courtroom here can technically fit up to 16 people.
That doesn't sound suspicious, does it?
Okay, that about does it for the preamble. Get ready to get started. First up is the case summary. Now, let the class trial begin.
Anything I found, anything I noticed, I have to be ready to speak up about everything, because this isn't just about me, everyone's lives are on the line. Your first non-stop debate is about to begin. Would you like to hear more? Yeah, they're kind of shit at explaining these things, but I'm going to go through the tutorial anyway. We need a reminder of the keys, and I also know how it's actually supposed to work. They don't explain it very well, and you're going to have to trial and error a few times before you actually get it. As things progress during each class trial, you will engage in a number of non-stop debates. During these discussions, characters will speak one after another without pause. It's up to you to unearth any lies or contradictions buried within their statements. So in a Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney game, there will be pauses, and you can basically sit and kind of ponder any specific statement or whatever. Whereas here, you can still kind of do that, but they're going to kind of flash through your frustum, like in, I wouldn't say real time, but without pause, like they said. So you're going to have to be a little bit quicker on your feet and identify when you have the time to actually pause and think without having to interact with the game. And there are a few places where you can do this. Anyway, what this means is you'll have to use your truth bullets to refute what they say. Any relevant truth bullets you found during the investigation will be loaded into the truth cylinder. Use the mouse to aim, then fire with the left mouse button. Pretty straightforward. Pay close attention to each character's statement and use your truth bullets to blast the right ones. Note that if you run out of time, you will automatically fail, so please be careful. If you press the escape key during these arguments, you can review the controls. Well then, good luck and have fun. Shouldn't be a major problem. So, we already have a truth bullet loaded. In the future, there are going to be multiple ones, and we're going to have to manually choose between our truth bullets, but now we're still kind of in tutorial mode, so...
I assert that the one who was murdered was Miss Sayaka Maizono.
Yeah, you know that part already.
And the murder took place in Makoto's room.
In the bathroom. So it seems most likely that the killer must have taken her by surprise while she was in the bathroom. She didn't even have a chance to resist.
That was obviously not quite true, right? And our evidence, our truth bullet, suggests
Just
why.
a second, Chihiro. try to remember how my room looked. With the way things had been damaged, I think we can definitely assume there was a struggle.
A struggle? Between who and who?
Between Sayaka and the killer, of course.
So you're saying Sayaka wasn't caught by surprise in the bathroom?
She must have been attacked in the main room first. Then, she ran to the bathroom to try and hide. The killer followed her in, and that's where they finished the job.
That much should have been obvious after taking one look at the scene. It shouldn't even need explaining.
Sorry.
Okay, so what's next?
Next is the subject of the murder weapon.
Wow, this is starting to sound like a real trial.
So, this gets more difficult when you have a higher difficulty level, obviously.
So what was used to kill her?
There was some kind of sharp
For instance, you're gonna have more options to choose from. That's an obvious one.
without a doubt. That is the murder weapon.
So the killer used some random knife they had on him.
Nope.
No, it's wrong. What the hell are you talking about?
Something was missing from the scene of the crime that by all rights should have been there. You know what I'm talking about.
Hangman's Gambit. What is that? Let's hear more about it. So, as things advance further in the class trial, the Hangman's Gambit will eventually take place. The point of this is to reveal an important phrase related to the incident in question. You will have to deduce the phrase from the letters flying around in the letters already known. Complete the phrase by shooting down the flying letters in the right order. Use the mouse to aim and then press the left mouse button to shoot the desired letters. If you shoot down the wrong letters, you'll suffer damage to your influence gauge. If this gauge reaches 0, or if you run out of time, you fail. Well then, good luck and have fun. Sounds simple enough. Something that should have been at the scene, but wasn't. That must be the crucial point. If you could just figure out what that something is, there are a bunch of different candidates, I suppose. I think it might be like the... Oh yeah, right, that's it. Right, you have to kind of shoot certain things multiple times. But yeah, we've got it. This was a very easy Hangman's Gambit. So as you might recall, hair had been removed from the crime scene with the roller thing. Closing argument is about to begin. Would you like to hear more? Not at all at this point. I know how it works. So it's basically, you have to kind of... You're making a timeline, right? So what you're doing is you're clicking stuff and it gives you a hint as to what is supposed to go into that thing. My room was the scene of the crime. The incident began when the killer entered. So down here, and we can kind of use the mouse wheel to kind of scroll if we want, are different like story panels that you can put here where the question mark is, and the question mark, like I showed before, actually gives you a hint as to what's supposed to go in there. Right, so my room was the scene of the crime. The incident began when the killer entered. Okay, that looks about right. Okay, so the killer goes into what they think is Sayaka's room, and Sayaka attacks them. By the way, this confused me at the beginning, but because I tried to go from here and in that direction, but it's a manga, which is kind of Japanese, so you're supposed to go left. This one, first, when Sayaka attacked the killer with a knife, they noticed something in my room. So what did the killer notice? Because I'm guessing that's what they mean. So let's see what the most relevant thing is that the killer could have noticed. They must have noticed that. In the sequel to this game, they make this a little bit different, and you get immediate feedback when you're right or wrong about the panels that you put in here. They used that object to deflect Sayaka's attack, which is why the evidence was damaged. Which object did they deflect the attack with? Looks like this. Cool. After the killer countered Sayaka's attack with an attack of their own, what did they do next? I don't know. Maybe unsheathed the sword and pointed at her? At which point Sayaka would have run into the bathroom and closed the door behind her. They forced the bathroom door open. The only logical way they could have done that was by using their toolkit. After she was stabbed, Sayaka used the last of her strength to leave something behind. Well, I think we know what that was. It was that. And there's poor Sayaka. So the killer used an item in my room to help dispose of evidence, which was the lint roller to remove hair strands, right? And then they proceed to try to incinerate stuff using the incinerator. The object the killer threw to activate the incinerator must have been this thing, right? The crystal ball. And then they proceed to throw their shirt in. What the killer threw in the incinerator was... Now we need to find the thing. What did they throw in there? This fabric thingy. The piece of evidence left behind in the trash room was... Right? So now we can press a button to reenact. So here's the thing, like, this is an interesting little thing where, like, you do have a lot of time or whatever, but the point of this whole exercise is you're supposed to do the reenactment, and it's a one big massive linear and proposition. Like, if you're wrong at any one point, the whole reenactment kind of falls apart. So this is the thing that is hardest to pixel hunt, right? Like, if you were to just put random panels in random places, the probability of getting it right would be pretty slim because it's such a big, massive and proposition. You don't get the immediate feedback that you do in the other segments, you know, the other gameplay sequences, you know, with the non-stop debates and so on and so forth. You usually get to do one question at a time and you get immediate feedback, right? Whereas here you don't. You're supposed to put all of these out and then do the reenactment. And once you've done that, you can right-click and then the game kind of goes through it all. And only when the reenactment bumps into a mistake does the whole thing stop and you get told that you've made a mistake, which is not how it works in the sequel. In the sequel, they're nicer with that part. So
the killer is you! I think I'd better take one more look back at the case from the beginning. Last night, the killer went to the room Sayaka was in. In other words, my room. From what we can tell, Sayaka invited that person there intending to kill them. She attacked them with the knife she'd taken from the kitchen earlier. But then something happened that she wasn't prepared for. They grabbed the fake sword I put in my room and fought back. During the struggle, a strike from the sword broke Sayaka's right wrist. And that's when she lost her grip on the kitchen knife. Finding herself cornered, Sayaka panicked and ran into the bathroom. The killer went after her, but couldn't get the bathroom door open. What they didn't know was that my bathroom door got stuck easily, and there was a trick to opening it. Sayaka knew about that because I told her, but of course the killer had no way of knowing. So instead, the killer forced the door open, took the kitchen knife, and stabbed Sayaka. But with what strength she had remaining, Sayaka left a dying message. To keep the killer from noticing, she wrote it on the wall behind her. And with that, all her strength was gone. With Sayaka dead, the killer quickly began destroying the evidence. First, they took off their shirt, which was covered in their victim's blood. Then they took the lint roller in my room and cleaned up the entire area. They wanted to make sure they got rid of any trace they'd ever been there. Afterwards, the killer headed to the trash room to destroy their bloody shirt. They tried to burn the shirt using the incinerator there, but the trash room was blocked off by an especially sturdy gate, preventing access to the incinerator. So they came up with a plan to use Hero's crystal ball, which he'd left in the laundry room. The killer managed to throw the ball through the gap in the gate and hit the incinerator switch. For any normal person, that'd be an impossible throw, but the killer had the confidence to take a shot. And that's because the killer was the ultimate baseball star. The crystal ball, thrown with absolute precision, hit the switch on the incinerator, which then quickly roared to life. Having destroyed the final piece of evidence, they left the area with, I imagine, a sigh of relief. But there was one thing they missed. Part of the shirt they'd thrown into the fire burnt away and fell out of the incinerator. The killer didn't notice this, and so left behind a piece of indisputable evidence. Isn't that right, Leon?
How cool is that? That's so well
It would
done.
appear that hero simply forgot his crystal ball in the laundry room. You went there to try and wash the blood out of your shirt, and that's where you saw it, right? Seeing the ball, you thought of a way to take care of everything.
So, Leon, do you object to anything that's been said?
Do I object? Hell yes, I object! Of course I do! I object! I object! I object! I mean, all of this is just a bunch of stupid theories! You need evidence! Where's the evidence? Without evidence, it's all bullshit! It's bullshit and I refuse to acknowledge it!
See, even if he's cornered, it would be best to get a confession out of the guy. So let's see if we can get him to kind of confess.
Well then, I guess this is as good a time as any to present the evidence that proves you did it. Makoto, I believe you're in possession of that evidence.
First bullet time battle is about to begin. Would you like to hear more? Okay. Sometimes during a class trial, your opponent simply won't want to hear what you have to say. When this happens, you will engage them in a head-to-head battle. We like to refer to this as a bullet time battle, aka the BTB, by the way. During the BTB, you want to destroy your opponent's statements in time with the rhythm, so it's basically a rhythm game. Match your button presses with each tempo marker as they move across the screen and reach the center. Press the right mouse button to lock onto an opponent's statement. Destroy the statement you've locked on to with the left mouse button as the tempo marker reaches the center. Use this method to deal damage to your opponent. If you can't pull it off, you'll be the one in pain. Okay, so this is the last little gameplay thingamajig they're going to teach us, and everything else in the future is basically going to be variations of it. Do this consecutively and you'll start a combo, keep this going, and you'll initiate a tempo up. On the flip side, if you keep missing, you'll get into a tempo down situation. When the tempo changes, so does the timing for hitting each button. So watch out for that. Deal enough damage to your opponent and their weak spot statement will appear. At that point, you can press the left mouse button to shoot it down with a truth bullet like any other statement. Refute their statement fast enough and you'll come out victorious. But just like before, if your influence gauge reaches 0 or if you run out of time you fail, well then good luck and have fun. And obviously in this first one, at the very end when I'm supposed to shoot the truth bullet, I'll only actually have one, but in the future I'm going to have to choose between multiple ones, I think.
When the killer removed the screws from the doorknob, they didn't use anything from your room to do it. Instead, they must have used something that belonged to them.
I refuse to acknowledge you! You're stupid! Stupid, stupid, stupid! Stupid, 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 stupid!
To show indisputable evidence that Leon is the killer, I need to figure it out. Right? Burrito time battery! Rhythm game time.
Where's your proof? You kidding me? Not a chance! It wasn't me!
So it's pretty straightforward. I just basically use right click, and the more things I target at the same time, the more cost effective this whole exercise is going to be.
Not a chance! Stupid! You lie! Shut up! Where's your proof? You kidding me? Not a chance! It wasn't me! Stupid!
I feel that the timing is a little bit weird.
Where's your proof?
This should prove it.
It feels like the visual marker and the beat of the music is not really in time. I don't know if it's a PC only type thing or something. I felt it was a bit off on the PS4 as well. Screws on the door.
I wonder what kind of tool the killer used to remove that.
I mean, it had to be a screwdriver, right?
Oh yeah. I'm pretty sure the toolkits we got each had one inside.
That must be what he used. There aren't any other tools anywhere.
But the toolkit in my room had clearly never been used.
That's because the culprit didn't know it was your room. They thought they were in Sayaka's room.
Only the boys got toolkits, so the killer naturally assumes there wouldn't be one in there.
Okay, then whose toolkit did the killer use?
Stupid, stupid, stupid!
It had to be their very own toolkit.
Stupid, 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 stupid!
Leon, would you mind showing us your toolkit? If I'm right about this, then the screwdriver will show some evidence of being used.
Stupid, stupid, stupid!
Huh? And if you say you used it for something else, you'll have to explain exactly when, where, and why.
And let me say this right now. I lost it isn't an excuse at this point.
Stupid. Stupid.
I feel bad for Leon. She did try to kill him.
So, you have no rebuttal?
Then it would seem we are finished here.
That's it. So that's the end of the trial. There's a bit of an epilogue to it before the chapter is over, so we're gonna watch that real quick. But from a purely mechanical point of view, I think we've pretty much covered most, if not all, of the game by now, right? So bringing up the mind map that I made before, now we can look at more of the class trial stuff than before. So we talked about the class trial mechanics. We had passive abilities, right? The abilities that we set before the trial that kind of affected stuff like how much health I had, and how much damage I do with my attacks, and so on and so forth. The active abilities was shooting stuff like shooting lines of dialogue, selecting truth bullets, of course, also for non-dialogue use. We had the hangman mechanics, and we could break those down into more detail. We had the reenactment mechanics. We had the panic talk action, bullet time battle. I think panic talk action is what they call it in the sequel. Not really that many more mechanics, right? So this is essentially a pretty good, I can zoom out here, this is a pretty decent breakdown at the high level of what the game is composed of. And doing something like this is actually a very good way of getting a sense of the scope of your high level game design. Because you could essentially ignore this part of the game, because this is just about how we are structuring the things that kind of exist over here. The features and categories of resources available in a game like this, it's not really that much content that needs to be made, right? If we do a little bit of a breakdown of what needs to happen, and we can do this within this too, so like we can do a geeky cost breakdown or work breakdown that's relevant for this, and we can say stuff like, well, okay, let's take like some arbitrary bit of content. Let's take something like a present, right? That's what we call them. Right, presents. And a present needs to have what? It needs to have graphics. It needs to have flavor text, right? It needs to have some sort of logic attached to it. And when we say logic, what we mean by that is so whenever that present gets used, when you give the present to one of the characters, for instance, there needs to be some way of identifying whether the present is one that the character will like, or you know, one that the character will not like, or if they're going to be indifferent to it or whatever. So you know, that can be put inside the present itself, or it can be put inside the character, right? So the character can be the container of like a list of all the different presents they like, to whatever degree they like them, or you can put that into the actual present game object itself. The present can have a list of which characters will appreciate it, right? So you can do either. It's up to you, right? So we have the presents, right? And then we can look at other stuff like character. So the scope of a character is an interesting thing. What does a character need to have? Well, a character has to have dialogue, right? And it needs to have graphics, and the graphics can be broken down in all kinds of different ways. And of course, dialogue can be both written and audio, of course. So basically, dialogue and graphics, and of course, we're going to have to go into more detail because that's so extremely high level. And then you basically have to put these two through the filter. Like when you're doing a proper work breakdown and you want to kind of quantify the number of man hours, what you do is generally you look at a generic character, like your arbitrary character, your average standard character, how many lines of dialogue will they generally have, right? So written, and then spoken. Now there's going to be an overlap here, sure, because if you want to have subtitling in the game, every spoken bit of dialogue is probably also going to exist in writing, but the other way around is not true. So not every written piece of dialogue needs to be recorded. It's good to know before you actually start hiring voice actors and stuff, especially in an extremely dialogue heavy game like the one we just saw. And then the graphics, right? So facial expressions, right? And then maybe like special graphics. So if we're doing like full screen panels or something like that, like, you know, the cutscene stuff that we saw and whatever. So not so much stuff that is part of the character cardboard cutout, but you know. So it's just a question of how we break it down and what we think the top level container is, right? So those special panels, those special types of graphics, are they really connected to the character, or would you say that they're connected to the case itself? Some of this stuff is a little bit just, you know, up to you how you want to, like, how you want to organize things. But another thing that needs to be considered is, like, Sayaka is necessarily going to have probably less of all of these than many of the other characters, so it's not to say all, because she gets written out of the story, right? So that's another interesting thing, and of course, where you want to log that, you know, that's kind of up to you. Maybe when you do the work breakdown, you do, like, you start with the character that is going to be along for the longest, so to speak. So which character is going to be there from beginning to end, which one never gets killed off, and then you scale the other characters backwards from that when you do your estimates. And then you have other stuff. Well, you have stuff like environments can be broken down further, and this is all just like the different content stuff. So we could basically write content, right? And then we could take all the content and we could put it in here, and essentially, you know, we've done much of the content here already, but not for the purposes of doing work breakdowns. But what you'll see then, and then of course independently of this, we're going to have features, mechanics, and then you're going to go into really low level and figure out what needs to go in there. But once you've done an exercise like this, and this should take you like a couple of hours at the most to identify like what features and what interaction possibilities need to exist, and what's the story basically going to be, and what implications that have for the amount of content that you want to make, you'll quickly find that even to make a game such as this one, I think even having, you know, 10 people is going to make for a really good game of this genre. And I mean, look at what just happened. I think, of course, it's not as interesting to play a game like this with me playing it and narrating stuff in my boring voice, but like, imagine that you had played it for real, and those of you who have played this for real in the privacy of your homes with, like, you know, the ambience being right and whatever, will agree that this is a pretty exciting game, and it's a pretty exciting game that doesn't get exciting because they're throwing a lot of expensive assets at stuff. The quality of the game stems from the quality of the writing and the quality of the content and some of the direction, but the actual tools they use to get their points across and tell their story are very simple. I mean, some of the more elaborate things that they're doing from a pure, should we say, kind of difficulty scope point of view is, you know, cutscenes like the one we're about to watch just now, right? So that's to kind of show that this is one of the reasons why I wanted to look at this game, is that this genre of game is really easy to break down. If you were to look at like a AAA type game, everything that you've seen me do thus far in the mind map is going to happen at least 10 times over, right? Just because there's so much complexity to everything, right? There's very little complexity to the things that happen here. It's just basically you could express most of what happens in this game as an Excel spreadsheet if you desperately wanted to. Whereas with something that has a lot of like second-to-second interacting and controls and what have you, it's going to be a lot more complex than that. Like, you're going to have a really hard time expressing stuff like the climbing mechanics of an Assassin's Creed or an Uncharted in the mind map format. I mean, you can, of course, identify that it's going to exist, but the work breakdown is going to be much more difficult. Whereas for a game like this one, the work breakdown that you identify at the high level is going to be very close to what actually ends up going into the game. There's going to be a lot closer of a relationship between what goes into the mind map and what's actually possible in the game. There's not going to be as many blanks left to fill in, and you could basically design the entire game almost in that mind map formula, with the exception, of course, of the dialogue writing, because if you write dialogue, especially this much dialogue in the mind map formula, you are insane. You probably have your dialogues in some other much better piece of software, even an Excel spreadsheet for easy localization and stuff, right? So I thought this was that was a good reason to look at this genre, because it lets us do a very simplistic breakdown of what goes on under the game's hood without making a total caricature of it. Whereas if we were looking at a more advanced game, like the aforementioned ones, then we would be making a caricature of it. Looking at it at that super high level is something that you do on day one out of 4 years worth of development with a 200-man team. So that initial mind map is just not even going to scratch the surface of the scope and complexity of what you're trying to build. It's probably still useful for the creative director to get a sense of where they are in their own brain, but it's not going to be nearly as useful to the dev team as a mind map like what we just made would actually be for someone making a game in this genre. So that's it. And that's it. And that is the game loop of Danganronpa. I mean, in the future there's going to be surprises. Absolutely. They're going to mess with the concept a little bit, and, you know, switcheroos and whodunits and all this different stuff. But overall, this is kind of the setup for the game, right? Aha, the spare bat. So this one I got just because of finishing this. There's a fair bit of linearity. Of course, you can change who gets killed or whatever. I'm sure that could be a good game concept to try out, by the way, if there could be some randomness in both who gets killed and by whom. You know, that could be an interesting concept to explore at some point if you could do it in a modular way sometime. So it could be a little bit like that one board game where it's like, oh, I know, it was this guy who used this weapon in the lounge, or something like that. But this game is a linear one. Anyway, we've been through pretty much everything, so thanks for those of you who've actually watched this. I'm going to both export this to YouTube and also do a version, a shorter version for YouTube, because there was a lot of just basically let's playing, so a bunch of narrated playthroughing, and that's not why you watch this stream. So I'll see about doing an edited version later, but anyone who wants to watch the long play versions, of course, I'm happy that you feel that way. Just gonna save this, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and like yeah, please let me know if there's anything you're curious about. Maybe let me know in the chat, or like through messages, or like as comments for the YouTube videos, and I'll try to elaborate more on some of the things if I need to. This is the first time I've tried to do it this way with the you know, with the mind map and all this stuff. I just thought it would be an interesting thing. I hadn't actually planned it as well as I would have hoped. I really forgot how grueling and how long this segment is until you get to the end of the first chapter with the prologue and everything. So next time I'll be better prepared for that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Thank you.